Rain lashed against Claire's car, blurring the winding road ahead. The old oaks lining the path swayed violently, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. She was late, much later than she intended. The storm had been unexpected, blowing in with the force of a hurricane. It was unlike any she'd ever witnessed in her small, sleepy town. Lightning cracked, momentarily illuminating the path. That's when Claire saw it, an old, dilapidated house looming large against the stormy sky. It seemed to materialize out of thin air, its silhouette stark against the flashing sky. She had never noticed it before, not in all her years of living here. How had she missed it? It was as if the storm had birthed it, spitting it out from some other dimension. Despite her growing unease, Claire slowed the car. A strange compulsion drew her towards the house. Was it curiosity or something else, a pull towards the unknown? The storm raged around her, echoing the turmoil brewing within her heart. What was she doing? The wrought iron gates groaned open as if disturbed after decades of slumber. Claire parked the car a little distance away, hesitant to get too close. The house loomed over her, its shadow swallowing her whole. Despite the storm's fury, an unnatural silence hung over the place. It felt heavy, expectant. Taking a deep breath, Claire approached cautiously. The air grew colder as she neared the house, sending a shiver down her spine. She reached out a hand to touch the front door, its wood rough and splintered beneath her fingers. To her surprise, it creaked open without resistance, as if inviting her in. The interior was shrouded in darkness, the only light filtering in through the gaps in the boarded-up windows. The air hung thick with the scent of decay and something else, something unidentifiable yet distinctly unsettling. Dust motes danced in the faint slivers of light, revealing the ghostly outlines of furniture frozen in time. A grandfather clock stood silent, its hand stopped at 11:15. Drawn by an unknown force, Claire stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind her with a resounding boom, sending a jolt of fear through her. She spun around, heart pounding against her ribs, but the room remained unchanged. It was then that she noticed the mirror. It stood at the far end of the hallway, its ornate frame dusty yet strangely gleaming in the gloom. The mirror was unusual, its surface clear and reflecting with an unnatural sharpness. As Claire approached, she noticed something peculiar. Her reflection moved differently. It wasn't mimicking her actions, not exactly. It felt like a separate entity altogether. A chill ran down her spine as she watched her reflection raise a spectral hand, its fingers long and bony to trace the outline of the mirror. Her own hand remained by her side, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't right, this wasn't possible. Panic welled up in her chest, choking her. She had to get out, now. Turning on her heel, she ran towards the front door, throwing her weight against it. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen force held it shut. She was trapped. Desperately, Claire rattled the doorknob, but it was no use. The door wouldn't give. She could feel her panic rising, threatening to consume her. She had to find another way out, but where? She risked a glance back at the mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. The reflection was no longer her own. It was a grotesque mockery, its features twisted into a horrifying grimace. The eyes, obsidian black and filled with malice, stared straight at her. A low growl emanated from the mirror, sending shivers down her spine. It was then that Claire knew she wasn't alone. Summoning the last vestiges of her courage, Claire fled. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to get away from that mirror, from that house. She could hear the growl echoing behind her, growing closer. Finally, she found a window, its glass cracked and brittle. Without hesitation, she smashed it open with her bare fist, ignoring the shards digging into her skin. She scrambled out, not daring to look back. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed for mercy. The image of the horrifying reflection seared into her mind, even as she finally collapsed on the familiar dirt road. Miles from the house, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She could feel those malevolent eyes boring into her back, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the horror had only just begun.